Get ready to commence with the proceedings for the day. We would like to begin the day by remembering our identity, by standing up for the country that we are so proud of. So if I may please request all of you to kindly rise as we would like to begin the proceedings for the day with the national anthem.
गंगा वृंद हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, namaste, and a very, very good morning to all our dignitaries, all our eminent speakers, guests, and ladies and gentlemen present right here. Welcome to this day of knowledge creation, learning, and sharing. On behalf of the Asian Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability and Mahendra and Young Knowledge Foundation, I, Minoti Parekh, would like to welcome all of you present right here to the 13th International Conference, Asia Business Responsibility Summit 2014. With this year's summit, we aim to analyze and evaluate the real meaning of the word profit and bring to light a perspective that would help us know that responsibilities of businesses is not just the tangible profit, but also the intangible forms as well. It's always been our endeavor to become a pan-Asian think tank and provide a common platform to multiple stakeholders to exchange and discuss ideas on advocacy, research, knowledge creation, training, and consulting in corporate governance and sustainability. So let me assure you that it's going to be an absolutely action-packed and power-packed day, and you don't want things to distract you. So if I may please request all of you to please make sure that your mobile phones are on silent mode through the proceedings of the day. Please, if I may request you all to please have your mobiles on the silent mode. And very quickly, is requesting Mr. M.K. Chauhan, Chairman, Mahendra and Young Knowledge Foundation, and Vice Chairman, Global Advisory Board, Asian Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability, to escort our chief guest, our keynote speaker, and our eminent speakers for the inaugural session. So if I may please request Mr. Chauhan to escort our chief guest, Mr. Prashant Saran, whole-time member, SEBI, our keynote speaker for the inaugural session, Judge Mervyn King, Chairman, the IIRC UK, and author of the King's Committee Report 1, 2, and 3 on corporate governance, along with escorting our eminent speakers for the inaugural session, Mr. Shailesh Vaidya, President, Indian Merchants Chamber, Mr. Ashish Kumar Chauhan, Managing Director and CEO, BSE Limited, and Mr. Yogi Sriram, President, Bombay Management Association. Well, it's early in the morning. I'm sure we can do with a little more louder round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, just so that we know we all are wide and awake and ready for the day. Thank you very, very much. And of course, before I request Mr. M.K. Chauhan to formally welcome the gathering present here, I would like to just take a couple of seconds to introduce to all of us present here. He's an elected member of Stakeholder Council of Global Reporting Initiative, Amsterdam. As managing director of a successful board advisory consulting company, he has the experience of sitting on several boards as an independent director from a variety of sectors like financial services, information technology, capital goods, telecommunications, etc., and has traveled extensively across the globe to deliver on presentations and talks. And on that note, if I may please request Mr. M.K. Chauhan to take up the podium and formally introduce the gathering present right here. So.
Thank you, Vinoti. Very happy good morning to all of you. Since this is the meeting of 2014, we are meeting in the new year. It's my privilege to extend a very happy and prosperous and peaceful, more so, happy 2014 to each one of you. Good morning, Mr. Prashant Saran, whole-time member of Securities Exchange Board of India, Mr. Mervyn King, Chairman, the IIRC, and also, if I may take this proud privilege, the Chairman of the Global Advisory Board of Asian Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability, Mr. Ashish Chauhan, CEO of Bombay Stock Exchange, the fabulous building in the hall where we are sitting, Mr. Shailesh Vaidya, President of Indian Merchants Chamber, my own chamber, I must say, because I am a part of the managing committee, Mr. Yogi Sriram, President of Bombay Management Association, and I must also say my own association because Yogi is the president, I happen to be the past president of Bombay Management Association. And by the way, I must inform that it is the Diamond Jubilee year of Bombay Management Association, and therefore BMA thought that they would want to be a part of many activities around the year, and thank you for being a part of supporting organization, Yogi. Some of the people who are not on the dais but are from the supporting organization, Mr. S.N. Anant Subramaniam, Institute of Company Secretaries of India, Mr. Puran Pandey from United Nations Global Compact, Professor Vijay Page, who is the director of MET Institute, who are our academic partners of Deloitte India, who are our knowledge partners. We have Ramesh, chairman of the Deloitte India, and several other partners. CNBC TV 18, who are our channel partners, delegates, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Asian Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability, it's my proud privilege to welcome you all. Thank you for making it possible to be here in such a, should I say, for Mumbai, cold morning. We're not used to such a cold morning. Asia Business Responsibility Summit 2014. But I must emphasize and welcome three very important special guests today. Mr. Prashant Saran, who is our chief guest. Thank you, sir, for despite of your such a busy schedule, you have been able to make it to be with us this morning. Mr. Mervyn King, thank you, Mervyn, for flying. I think it's not new for you. We know you live out of suitcases and aircrafts. Thank you for coming all the way from South Africa. And our special guest, Dr. Theodorina Lesidrenska, who has come here from Geneva. Thank you. I must mention here, it was in 2003 that Mervyn and I together, we joined hand with IIM Bangalore, and we had a program there, which was one of the first director development programs, which was co-directed by me and Professor Balasubramaniam. And taking advantage of his visit to India, IIM Bangalore launched a Center for Corporate Citizenship. And Mervyn was pleasantly surprised when he was asked to inaugurate that Center for Corporate Citizenship, and his name was there carved on a stone. And Mervyn very jokingly said that I am one of those rare persons whose name is carved on stone when he's alive. And exactly after 10 years in 2013, they again called him to deliver a keynote address for Center of Corporate Citizenship, and that's how Mervyn is has connected these two events and is with us. So thank you, Mervyn, for being with us. We have a few consul generals. For the paucity of time, I will not mention everyone's name, but I welcome them all in the audience. Thank you, because we work with 10, 12 countries within Asia. So with some of the consul generals of these countries, we always work with them and invite them into our several programs. I also want to extend a warm welcome to all of our jury members who are the members of the awards committee and our panel speakers who will be coming on the dais during the course of the day. Having welcomed all the dignitaries by words, I would like to welcome them in our own signature way. For last couple of years, we have, Ashank, can I request you to be here? There are a few seats here. For a few years, we have stopped presenting flowers to our dignitaries and members and speakers. Instead, because we are Asian Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability, so for sustainability, what we are doing is for planet Earth, we have to replenish the resources. So United Nations Environment Program has got a 1 billion tree program. We've been supporting UNEP's 1 billion tree program. And for each of our speakers and chief guests and special guests, we plant 10 trees in their name. So today we are going to present to each one of them a green certificate. And the certificate that we are presenting today, these trees are planted at the National Park, Kanha National Park, which most of you are aware there, the erosion is taking place. So over to Minoti. Once again, welcome to all of you.
Thank you very much, sir. And yes, if I may please request you, sir, to please welcome our dignitaries on the dais with the green certificate, starting off by welcoming our chief guest for the inaugural session, Mr. Prashant Saran, whole-time member, SEBI. A very warm welcome to you, sir, and thank you very much for gracing the inaugural session for the day. Yes, welcoming Judge Mervyn King, Chairman, the IIRC UK, with the green certificate. Yes, welcoming Mr. Ashish Kumar Chauhan, Managing Director and CEO, BSE Limited. Mr. Sailesh Vaidya, President, Indian Merchants Chamber. And Mr. Yogi Sriram, President, Bombay Management Association. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, sir, for doing us the honors of welcoming our dignitaries. I'm going to request you to take your seat back, and well, that's truly a remarkable initiative by ACCGS, totally in line with our mission to create a more sustainable environment and a more socially aware society. So after setting the tone for the day, time for us to move on to something extremely auspicious, because with all the hard work, all the efforts, the right intention, there's always God's blessings that we truly need for every success. And right now, we did like to ask the Almighty to bless us with the lamp lighting ceremony. So if I may please request our dignitaries on the dais to please step down and do us the honors of lighting the ceremonial lamp, as we ask the Almighty to bless us and guide us through the day, and also ask Him to pray to Him for the success of our conference for the day. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, sirs. And now may I please request Mr. M.K. Chauhan to share with us the details about the conference and what's in store for all of us today. So back to you, sir.
So it's my privilege again to take you through the conference overview. Though the program in short is there in the folders that you have with you, but I thought I must take you through the entire thinking that went behind the whole thing with the help of Deloitte, our knowledge partners, and our steering committee. May I request someone to please extinguish these, because I see some smoke and some smoke alarm. I'm little, because it happened once in Taj, that with much of smoke, the alarm, I heard a very feeble alarm. Ashish, is that right? Are we safe? No problem. Okay. So why this summit? Business responsibility, corporate responsibility, corporate social responsibility. Are they all same? My sense is they are same. But as we go around the world with Mervyn, with Theodorina, and when we hear people talking about this concept, they are same, but they are perceived differently by different companies and different countries. Particularly, not very many countries in Europe or in America want to use the word CSR. They are more comfortable with corporate responsibility. And therefore, we thought to discuss this concept more in detail, we must have a business responsibility summit. I always make this proposition whenever I meet people in conferences like this, that the only entity in this world which creates wealth are businesses. They may be proprietary businesses, they may be partnership businesses, private limited companies, public limited companies, listed companies, unlisted companies. The only entities that create wealth around the world are businesses. Yet, not all businesses have very good perception. The society does not have very good perception about all the businesses. So there must be definitely something in the way businesses are being done that needs to be changed. And therefore, Minoti started by saying that we are going to discuss and give different meaning to profit. Profit is absolutely important for business. Without profit, one cannot really sustain. But profiteering probably is the part because of which society does not have a very positive impression about businesses. So, what is it that needs to be changed? It doesn't require a rocket science to realize that which picture on the screen is more clearly visible. So the focus is to move beyond the profit and have to go towards social capital as well as environmental capital. And one of the major responsibilities which Mr. Saran, our chief guest, is going to talk to you about, because I want to compliment SEBI for coming up with BRR, Business Responsibility Reporting, just last year, 1 year ago, which has mandated reporting listed companies on triple bottom line, because whatever kind of business that we are in, regardless of whether it is IT companies or financial services companies, which are not typically very polluting company, but yet they do have influence and footprints on society in the way they do businesses, and in some way they have impact on the environment also. So that's the triple bottom line we need to move on to. So that's my first proposition to all of you. And I always like to borrow the cartoon of Mervyn, that out of these two stools, it doesn't again require a rocket science that which stool is more stable. The corporates which are careful and sensitive towards the environmental capital, which nurtures the social capital going beyond only their employees but all the stakeholders. And of course, in the process, they do make profit. So that's the proposition. Now, I just wanted to create one example. I said, if we assume that corporates are a building, solid building, which is creating wealth, which is standing on three pillars, which is profit, planet, and people. And moving forward, if we try to move away profit, it happens perfectly well that in the life of the corporates for 1 year, 2 years, or for a couple of years, one is not able to make profit. Anything happens to the building called company or the corporate, you can see one pillar is gone, nothing has happened. But the moment you are not sensitive towards people, the community, your employee, and society at large, look at the impact that happens on your organization. And go next. Cost of externalities, businesses have not yet thought, Marvin, you would agree with me. All businesses draw from Mother Earth, environment and nature, certain kind of resources in terms of material for the products that they produce. And if they are not replenished, and if the cost of these externalities are not taken into accounting, which the accountants of the world are currently not very, very appreciative of, and the corporates, then the result is obvious. The corporates are not going to be there around for a very long time. And look at what's happening to the tougher environment of the business today. You have all these stakeholders, and on the top of this, the raison d'etre, we all feel that customer is the king and consumer is the king. What's happening? The business reality is consumers are becoming more discerning and demanding. They exactly know what are the costs and prices of the products, so they want to pay less and less and want to get more and more. So they are becoming very demanding and discerning. Employees, today the talent pool, there is virtual crunch, they are very smart cookies, they exactly know their worth and they are being pampered, and there is a virtual war to attract good talent in the organizations. Lenders, they demand more transparency, more disclosures. Media, boards are under the glare of media. Anything, any wrong decision, any irresponsible decision board takes, media is going to sometimes bloat it out of proportion. Civil society is becoming very, very activist. I was told don't mention and talk about AAP, Aam Aadmi Party, but I think we'll have to live with that certainty which is happening on the horizon of politics of India. And the regulators, which includes, of course, people like Mr. Saran and others. So these kind of pressures are increasingly becoming important for businesses to look at, and therefore business has to be done more responsible, in a more responsible manner, and therefore ESG is very, very important. To build the story further, it's in the enlightened self-interest of the companies that they become sensitive towards all these stakeholders, because empirical evidence around the world has proven that companies which are socially responsible and do their businesses in a manner by producing safer products using cleaner technologies and take care of the communities and the society at large have a longer longevity, and they are rewarded by almost every stakeholder that are listed here. Consumers by repeated buying, employees by their long-term service, by their loyalty, lenders giving prime lending rates. Media is very, very considerate to those companies which are socially responsible. In the time when something goes wrong, they don't bloat it out of proportion. And you have seen several examples. Civil societies, the same thing. And regulators also do not become extremely punitive. towards the corporates which are socially responsible, who have a historical background of having adopted the responsible business practices. Now, when we run businesses, legally, we have contracts with almost all these stakeholders. So I want to talk, this is a very important part of my presentation, that the legal contract versus social contract. With consumers, with lenders, with communities, with everyone, with suppliers, we have a legal contract, and of course everyone is legally bound to respect that agreement. But what about the social contract? So it is the companies which are winner, companies which are progressive minded, they are more careful, and that's what separates that what you do which is not enshrined in a legal agreement between you and the stakeholder. And therefore, I want to propose to this august audience that we have to think about how do we go beyond the call of law and take care of our social contract. Therefore, I come back to the major issue. I always call that the board is the fountainhead for every organization, and therefore strong corporate governance focused on providing business value. It's like the head of the family, children, they very silently observe the head of the family, and the value system automatically gets transferred to the youngsters in the company. Same way, the things that board rewards, the thing that board punishes or dissuades or discourages are very smartly observed across the organization, and therefore corporate governance is extremely important to set up the value system which I call the corporate sanskaras or the DNA of the organization. And growth is imperative, of course, but responsible growth. Not only for, there are mergers and acquisitions. I sit on a couple of boards, and we have seen examples that there are certain mergers and acquisitions where CEOs fail to convince the board that is there a synergy for these mergers and acquisitions. It's only for the size. Sometimes it's only for, so that megalomaniac thinking for the companies is not really very, very good, and that is how the responsible growth is to be approached. So, on all these issues, we are going to hear the wisdom and out of the experience of the speakers, and we have galaxy of speakers. I would very quickly take you through who are the people. First of all, we will have the pleasure and privilege of hearing Mr. Prashant Saran, the whole-time director of SEBI. We have requested him to, sir, kindly share with us in 1 year's time what has been the uptake of business responsibility reporting of corporate India, and going forward, what are your initiatives that you have in mind, sir? Marvin is going to talk to us about business reporting is not what it used to be. Marvin, as I told you, is the chairman of International Integrated Reporting Council of UK. This is an initiative which has been started by the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, and all the people in financial world and business world and industry world internationally who matter are on the governing body or the committee, IIRC committee. The multinationals of the world, the Coca-Colas and Procter & Gamble's and all. 130 companies have signed up for a pilot project for integrated reporting. I don't want to steal the thunder of Marvin, and Marvin will tell us what is integrated reporting in much more lucid manner than I can do. So he's going to talk to us about business reporting is not what it used to be. We have Mr. Ashish Kumar Chauhan, CEO of BSE, and exchanges have a great role in promoting the responsible business practices. And Ashish is going to throw a light on us as to how Bombay Stock Exchange is doing that bit. Chambers of Commerce used to be lobbying organization, but they're not only lobbying organization anymore. So we have Shailesh Vaidya, who is the president and my own colleague. I sit on the managing committee, as I told you earlier, as to how Indian Merchants Chamber is promoting fair business practices, and I must share with you that it was only last year or year before. Indian Merchants Chamber has rolled out a particular code of conduct and ethics in the form of a booklet and has circulated it very, very widely to all members and other stakeholders, and Shailesh is going to take us through that. Mr. Yogi Sriram, President of Bombay Management Association. Board governs, but after that, management takes it forward. And I have written certain corporate governance mantras that a company will be as well governed as the management wants it to be. Because board acts on certain facts and information that is provided to it by the management. Of course, board has its own wisdom, its own way of asking questions, right kind of questions to get to the root of things. Therefore, the role of management is extremely, extremely important in fostering these responsible business practices. So, Yogi, maybe briefly, you can talk, and he will also do a pleasant duty for us for presenting a word of thanks and introducing our chief guest. Theodorina Lesidrensica is a former, or rather founder member of GRI, of which I am a member of the Stakeholder Council, and Mervyn, till some years ago, used to be the chairman of GRI Global Board. She's going to talk in May 2013, Teddy, we met at Amsterdam. That's where the GRI G4 framework was rolled out. Up till now, the world had been reporting on G3.1. There was certain, because it's a multi-stakeholder engagement, we have around 60 members from different constituencies, which are from civil society, from businesses, from industry, from mediating organizations, from government organizations, from regulators, who meet together twice a year. And the feedback from all these multi-stakeholders comes to GRI, and GRI has come out with this sustainability reporting framework, which is G4, with great fanfare. Actually, it was started in the time of Mervyn, and Herman Mulder publicly acknowledged that the initiative which Mervyn started was being rolled out. So she's going to talk to us about G4. G4 is one of the most globally acceptable framework for reporting on sustainability. United Nations Global Compact, all the companies who are here in the audience, if you're reporting on G4, GRI, you don't need to report separately on United Nations Global Compact principles. OECD is now a partner of GRI. So the multinational guidelines for reporting for OECD are embedded in GRI framework also. So it's a very, very exhaustive framework. It will be a challenging task for Theodorina to package it in a short while that we have provided to her. Mr. Pooran Pandey is the Director General of Global Compact India Network. He's going to talk to us about the 9 famous principles of Global Compact. And then we have Namita Vikas. So we thought that we must bring from industry some background as to what are the best practices in responsible business reporting. She's going to share some of them in generic terms as well as what is happening at Yes Bank. She's the President of Responsible Banking at Yes Bank. Then we'll have Ramesh, who's chairing one of the sessions, and Ramesh, as the chairman of Deloitte, I always admire his clarity of thoughts and the way he puts across things. So he's going to talk to us because Company Bill or Companies Act now has mandated certain newer things. The whole landscape of corporate governance, corporate social responsibility has changed. So how is it going to impact going forward the business responsibility and reporting? He's going to share with us. We'll also have Mr. Paresh Tiwari, who is the Vice President and Group Chief Sustainability Officer of CSR. Look at these titles. 5 years ago, we didn't even find these positions. Now, we have such a focus in organizations that CSR and sustainability, we have dedicated departments and people who are very senior and who are sensitive, who can take these initiatives across the organization. So Paresh is going to talk about certain best practices and also his experience at JSW. Ms. Anant Subramaniam. Company secretaries, I always call that they are the conscious keepers of the board. And I have always found them in a very, very silent manner. Whenever any board member has missed out on something or other, they bring us back to the course and they support. So he's going to talk, again, a different flavor of the Companies Act and the ICSI as an organization, how they are supporting the responsible business practices. We have Mr. R. Ramakrishnan. He is the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Polycab. He's going to talk of some best practices from the industry. And in the evening, we will have awards. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your indulgence, and over to Minoti.
Thank you very, very much, sir, for giving us a detailed overview about the proceedings for the day and also a brief introduction about our eminent speakers lined up for the day. On that note, before I hand over the podium to Mr. Ashish Kumar Chauhan, would just like to take a minute to formally introduce sir to all of us present here. Prior to his current role as the Managing Director and CEO of BSE Limited, Mr. Ashish Kumar Chauhan has served as the CEO of BSE Limited from 2009 to 2012. He's also been a director at BSE Limited, also serves as Director of BOI Shareholding Limited, Central Depository Services India Limited, United Stock Exchange at India Limited, and as a member of Clearing Council and Governing Council at BSE Limited. On that note, may I please request Mr. Ashish Kumar Chauhan to share his views about responsible exchanges with all of us present right here. Sir.
Respected Mr. Saran, Mr. Marvin King, Mr. Chauhan, Mr. Vaidya, Mr. Yogi Sriram, friends, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and honor to be in front of you. For me, there are many things which we can talk about the exchanges, but one of the biggest things we talk about is the corporates. We serve corporates as stakeholders, we serve investors, and we serve every other stakeholders, as Mr. Chauhan pointed out. For me, the corporate governance, corporate social responsibility, sustainability, they have evolved over last almost 600 years. In some sense, the world has progressed a lot in last 600 years, much more than it ever progressed in probably ever before. Most of the progress can be attributed to the corporates. The new way of getting together, combining resources for creating businesses was an interesting model starting from 13th century, 14th century. But some of the greatest problems also have been created by the corporates. In some sense, the corporates were a new concept 500 years back, 600 years back, and they created their own framework until almost 10 years back. A corporate governance was basically about shareholder protection, a non-owner, non-manager shareholder protection. You had to make profits and you had to share it. And some of the biggest issues, as I said, have been created by the corporates. The East India Company was one of the corporates, one of the early corporates. It created a total havoc in this country. But it created a huge opportunity for Europe as a whole. It created a new business model for Europe to subjugate others. And so, in some sense, the corporates have always figured out a way to kind of explain their abilities. And for me, it's important to remember that corporates have been a cause for very, very many goods, but also bad. And how do we define what is it that we need to do now? There are 3 or 4 issues which we work on. One is what we call asymmetry of information and asymmetry of power. The owner-managers have more power to take decisions on behalf of the organization, and they have more information vis-a-vis non-manager shareholders. be that private equity players, be that small investors, and so on and so forth. So that is one piece which has always been there as a part of the corporate governance in saying how do we manage the board, how do we manage the independent director. In fact, yesterday in one of my flights, I was discussing with one of the chartered accountants sitting next to me about the role of independent directors and whether we are actually using them correctly, whether they are using themselves correctly, and so on and so forth. So that's one piece of the puzzle which we need to resolve. That asymmetry of information and asymmetry of power is a very, very important issue we need to resolve as corporate chieftains, saying how do we go about resolving this in a more fair manner. And there will be smaller unfair activities. I mean, 20 years back, if you talked about corporate governance, especially on listed companies space, it was largely about reporting requirements, people not reporting, and so on and so forth, or people reporting wrongly. 20 years, that is now, we are not even talking about it. Quarterly reports happen. Usually, the audit reports are basically published in time, and so on and so forth. Annual reports come. The AGMs are handled well, and so on and so forth. So India has come a long way. The world has come a long way. But it is a longer way to go. The insider trading, which was not a bigger issue those days, because we have solved larger, low-hanging, high-impact fruits. Now we are going higher in terms of the lower impact, higher hanging fruits, and insider trading is one of them. There is another issue which has always sort of been in exchange notice, is that how do we handle this asymmetry of information by disclosures? Disclosures on periodic basis, on material event basis, are some of the issues which we still are grappling with. The periodic basis disclosures have been actually covered very well. The material event basis information is still an issue going forward. In terms of the asymmetry of information, somewhere on the line, because the information technologies allowed us to set up websites of the exchanges, of the companies, and so on and so forth, there is a huge amount of information that is available from a variety of sources. But how do we basically ensure that it is coming in time, people don't take advantage vis-a-vis other stakeholders, and so on and so forth. And that is where we still need to do a lot of work. Hopefully, the new India and new world, especially youth in India, is expecting a different role from corporates, from government, and so on and so forth. And that is where we have a huge hope that as and when the India awakes, which it is, it's going to expect different behavior from the corporates. For me, corporates are artificial constructs. They are not natural constructs like human beings, even like animals. It is created out of social contract that we get together and it becomes a legal entity which can sue people, which can enter into contract. But actually, it is happening at the behest of the agents. And then agency conflict is one of the largest issues we are dealing with in terms of the corporate governance, that is from the shareholder perspective, but also corporate sustainability perspective. That how do we manage the agency conflict? And this is a very, very fundamental issue. Till the time human mind will be there will continue to be agency conflict. And how do you resolve it in a more fair and amicable manner without upsetting the apple cart? And that's where the exchanges work on. Recently, the new Companies Act has also imposed a new framework of corporate social responsibility on all the corporates beyond certain size, that they have to also spend more than 2% of their, or 2% of their profits on corporate social responsibility activities. And that is perhaps the first time in the world that it has been legislated. And today, India accounts for 16% of world population. 1 out of 6 humans stay in this country. It's a very, very large country, although we may not have large market capitalization, we may not have large GDP, but we have large number of humans. And somewhere on the line, this 2% spend on CSR will go a long way. I have a firm belief that the corporate heads who have been creating strategies, doing execution for getting larger profits, more profits, getting into newer businesses, the same minds when they apply their brains to the corporate social responsibility, it will go a long way. BSE has already tied up with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs and Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs to come out with indices for measuring the CSR and corporate governance of each company. A committee has been set up. I am not part of the committee, but let me tell you, it's not going to be an index of 30 companies, 50 companies, 100 companies, but it's going to be an index where each company can measure itself against its own activity. So you will have people who will be probably in red, who are not, and they will be able to measure themselves. You will be able to measure, every stakeholder will be able to measure that company, so that as and when those indices are created and they come into force, you will have a more sort of interesting ways to measure the three legs of the same stool. Mr. Chauhan pointed out that ultimately how do we create that stable stool? And this is one way to handle it. BSE also has aspirations and also has a tie-up with Ministry of Corporate Affairs and IICA to create a CSR exchange to get all the projects listed out. I mean, we specialize in getting people together, trade information, trade stocks, getting them delivered, and so on and so forth. But we have sort of that expertise we can use for actually setting up a CSR exchange where the NGOs which are doing the work, the districts which want particular projects to be done, the consultants and the companies can get together into this big marketplace which is going to come up for CSR and do good for the country. So we have not yet kind of outlined what we need to do, but we have an aspiration to also create a CSR exchange. We already are tying up with Tata Institute of Social Sciences and many other institutions to actually work on this. And we think it's a part of our mandate to create this framework of CSR exchange so that it becomes a role model and many more exchanges of CSR can come up. In terms of sustainability reporting, BSE has got a CarbonX, which measures, it's an index which measures the carbon emission of various companies and incorporates them in the index if they are good, and also gives different tilt weight, as we call it. More weight if you are less carbon user, and less weight if you are sort of more carbon user. Similarly, we have a BSE GreenX, which is again about a similar activity. But basically, BSE is also part of the UN Sustainable Exchange mechanism. BSE was the first exchange in the world to sign up for that. And so BSE has been sort of taking leadership in the role in setting up corporate governance mechanisms, corporate social responsibility activities, and for 139 years, BSE has been taking leadership. It has helped India create $1.2 trillion of wealth. It will continue to create that wealth or continue to act as a catalyst for creation of wealth in the country. But most importantly, it will also ensure that the society thinks that the corporates are useful. In New India, if the corporates as artificial constructs, if we do not project ourselves, if we do not actually do the work, not only project but do the real work of being useful to the society in addition to being useful to ourselves, our shareholders, we may become irrelevant, we may not be required. Society may not allow us to act in this society if we don't become useful. And for that, our own selfish perspective, we need to be actually getting into a framework which is connected to the society in a more positive way. With that, thank you very much for coming here today morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, sir, for sharing your thoughts with us. Our next speaker for the inaugural session is Mr. Shailesh Vaidya, President, Indian Merchants Chamber. Mr. Vaidya is the elected President of Indian Merchants Chamber. He's the partner and practicing advocate and as well as solicitor in Messrs. Kanga and Company since 1985. He serves as the chairman of the Law, Review, Reforms and Rationalization Committee of the Indian Merchants Chamber and as member of Managing Committee of the Indian Merchants Chamber. And right now, I'd like to request Mr. Vaidya to speak about the role of Chambers of Commerce and Industries in promoting responsible business practices. So,
thank you. Mr. King, Mr. Prashant Sharan, dignitaries on the dais, the guest speakers, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, let me congratulate the Asian Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability for organizing this high-profile summit on the responsibility of businesses. The Indian Merchants Chamber is privileged to support this timely summit, and I, as the Indian Merchants Chamber President, am honored to address this summit. In this day and age, the importance of this kind of summit can hardly be overstated. Let me begin by saying that our Chamber's theme this year, Sustainable Development, does reflect the spirit of this summit. Effective corporate governance and the complexity of sustainable development call for a concerted global cooperation based largely on the joint coordination of strategies and the judicious adoption of best practices in businesses. All chambers of commerce and industry have a vital role to play in promoting responsible business practices and codes of conduct. Our activities can be geared to supporting and promoting CSR, sustainability, corporate governance with ethical business practices. A key objective of the Indian Merchants Chamber is to enable the local business community to assume greater responsibility in meeting social and environmental obligations which cannot be separated from economic growth. IMC has always tried to promote Mumbai as the region's gateway for global commerce by offering its international business partners an environment of transparency and the rule of law. Mr. Ashish Kumar Chauhan mentioned about CSR, so I may point out that our contribution to CSR goes very well. IMC has been invited as a corporate partner with the state government of Maharashtra for undertaking an ambitious education quality improvement program that is being spearheaded by the Department of Education, Government of Maharashtra. Our chamber has been one of the pioneers in promoting ethical business practices. In this context, we have developed a code of business principles to codify the best and the most significant business practices of doing business. It includes encouraging all stakeholders to ensure compliance with laws and regulations, drop a training calendar for sensitizing all about applicable laws and regulations, and also of continuous training programs for updating the same. It also empowers fearless reporting of non-compliances, if any, and ensures the protection of whistleblowers against any unfair treatment. We believe in ensuring that competitive information in the normal course of business is collected only through legally permitted sources and means. Privacy and confidentiality of third-party data is given high importance. Our members are encouraged by this code to take necessary steps to protect third-party confidential information, and the same prudence as would be in the case of their own proprietary information has to be maintained. We have impressed upon all members the need to develop ethical, professional, and transparent relationships with all the stakeholders, be they customers, shareholders, or business partners. To sum up, the environment, social, and economic factors and good corporate governance with ethical business practices are at the heart of corporate and business strategies. They need to be on the daily agenda of every organization, including a Chamber of Commerce, since they stimulate work for success and act as an incentive for maximizing opportunity. I would like to create measurable and relevant goals of sustainable development and suitable metrics, and every more integrated and authentic reporting of the financial and non-financial information of companies. Our respective organizations can take the initiative in this vital sphere also. I would like to again congratulate and thank the Asian Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability, and more particularly Vice Chairman Mr. M.K. Chauhan, for spearheading this movement in India on an ongoing basis, which can go a long way in improving and promoting responsible business practices and thereby improve the standard of corporate governance. Both in turn can lead to a business-friendly, sustainable development. Thank you, Asian Center, for giving me the opportunity to address this August gathering. Please accept my best wishes for the success of this summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, sir. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to an extremely informative and insightful keynote address by our keynote speaker for the session, Judge Mervyn King. And of course, sir does not need any introduction because I'm sure each and every one of us present right here know about sir's expertise, experience, achievements, and of course the list of successes that he has under his belt. So without further ado, if I may please request Judge Mervyn King to kindly enlighten us with his extremely insightful keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker to the podium. So.
My presentation. I have prepared a detailed PowerPoint presentation, but I'm afraid we've run out of time.
You have enough time.
So,
no, you have taken enough time. If I may propose, I'm sorry because we started a little bit late, but I think to hear Mervyn is extremely important, and to Mr. Saran, and therefore I have proposed if we can serve tea on the table. Please bear with me. All of us have gathered to listen these two gentlemen more than anyone else. So please, the floor is yours.
all right, thank you very much. Let me just try and articulate what I wanted to say so that with some clarity I leave you with a message, because I'll have to rush through this PowerPoint presentation. I will leave the slides with Mahendra, which he can share with you. But let me go back to the 19th century, the last quarter, when the concept of limited liability really took off, where by statute, including India, governments permitted the creation of an artificial person. You who are born here in India are a citizen of India. But a company that is created in terms of your Companies Act becomes as much a person in India as all of you. But it is a person that is absolutely incapacitated and inanimate on its birth when you get the certificate of registration. It cannot operate without individuals. And directors are appointed by shareholders, and those directors become the heart, mind, and soul of the company. And hence you get the duties internationally of directors of good faith, care, skill, and diligence. And to give that content, one needs to understand that you're dealing with an incapacitated, inanimate, artificial person, which is, however, sovereign and is not owned by anyone. If I said to any one of you in the audience here today that I own you, you would laugh at me. And yet, from the 19th century, when the providers of capital to companies was in the main wealthy families, and those wealthy families appointed their members as directors, the employees, the customers, members of society, generally, colloquially, and quite incorrectly, referred to those shareholders as the owners of the company. Shareholders do not own a company. They have a conglomeration of very important incorporeal rights which can be exercised, such as the vote to appoint the directors, if necessary, to remove the directors, to receive a dividend if the board has agreed to declare a dividend. From the 19th century into the 20th century, there was no even financial reporting. Companies carried on business, and it became the chosen medium in which entrepreneurs could take their businesses and place the business into this artificial person and ring-fence risk. It took a global event, the Great Depression of the 1930s, to make people realize that one should know what was happening financially in this critical person in society. Milton Friedman, the economic laureate in the late 20th century, said that the corporation has nothing to do with social responsibility. Its sole job is to make profit without deception or fraud. What was he saying? He was saying that the company is apart from society and is not a part of society. It is critically a part of society. Have a look at the companies in India. If I had to say to this audience that the great Tata company is not a part of the Indian society, you would think I've lost my mind. It is critically a part of society. And yet it was only in the 1930s that one started with financial reporting. And so great international bodies were formed, like the International Accounting Standards Board. We have the chairman of Deloitte here. And then the question of giving independent assessment of what you were reporting. And so the birth of independent external auditing, the Institute of Assurance, the IAASB Standards Board, was created. But international financial reporting standards are created by the IFRS Foundation through the IASB, but the great capital market of the world, the United States, does not follow those standards which we follow in this part of the world. They have the Financial Accounting Standards Board with US GAAP. For many years, and there are several accountants in this room, the FASB and the IASB have discussed convergence of accounting standards so that we have one standard of financial reporting throughout the world. They have not succeeded for political and other reasons. By 1995, we now move towards the end of the 20th century. Financial reporting was becoming more and more complex. But another phenomenon was occurring, and an examination of the great stock exchanges of the world showed that the market capitalization of companies, the number of shares in issue, times the market price according to supply and demand, that the market cap, only 20 to 30% of that total market cap was represented as by additives in a balance sheet according to these financial reporting standards. What was the other 70, 80%? And why were directors not reporting on this 80%? This led to thought leaders in the world saying we need to develop some standards on these other issues, which embraced matters such as the reputation of the company, the reputation of how it makes its money, the impact of its product on society and the environment. And so these thought leaders started creating non-financial aspect reporting. This led to the birth of the Global Reporting Initiative in Boston, of which Dr. Leszadrenska was a party, and non-financial aspect reporting started. Financial reporting, mainstream. Non-financial sustainability reporting has also now become mainstream. And it's almost natural these two great streams would have a confluence and integrate. Well, let's just look another two great events to the turn of the 21st century. The great corporate collapses of WorldCom, Tyco, Enron led to more complexity in financial reporting. The IASB and the FASB said we must improve the standards of financial reporting. So complexity was added to complexity. And the way we were reporting, the user, which is members of society, 999 out of 1,000 found it absolutely incomprehensible. IFRS speak is incomprehensible. We have the chairman of Deloitte here, and we have senior business people here. You all know in doing external audit from time to time, your designated lead auditor will say, I have to consult one of my technical partners on this issue because it has become so complex. Let me make a glib statement, but very profound. To be accountable, you have to be understandable. It is our duty as directors to report to this inanimate entity, this artificial person, the company, and through the company to the stakeholders. The non-financial aspect reporting, G4 now, is reporting in what I call sustainability reporting speak, such as ecological overshoot. In plain language, that means that the company is using natural assets faster than nature is regenerating them. Financial reporting is critical, but on its own is not sufficient. Sustainability reporting is critical, but on its own is not sufficient. We are now in the 21st century. It's a changed world. We have financial crisis, we have climate change crisis, we have ecological overshoot, we have population explosion, and we have a diminishing natural asset base. 7 billion people, in 35 years' time, another 2 billion people, and natural asset base diminishing. In that context, all of you sitting here today run your businesses using natural assets. If you think you can just carry on as usual, well, welcome to the age of stupidity. You cannot discharge your duty of care to the company today without having regard to the fact that every company uses 6 resources: financial, manufactured, machinery, plant, buildings, human capital, your employees, your management, intellectual capital, the creation of strategy, ideas, innovation, natural assets. Your trucks drive on the road, you breathe the air, you use water. Whatever your business, you are using natural assets which the company doesn't even own. And then there's social capital. Every company has stakeholders. It's a question of identifying those stakeholders relevant to the business of that company. And management and the board needs to understand what are the legitimate and reasonable needs, interests, and expectations of those stakeholders of the company. Some of the world's great companies have now created a new corporate animal called the Corporate Stakeholder Relationship Officer. His or her sole job is to understand the needs, interests, and expectations of stakeholders. Feed that information to management. Management starts developing strategy on a more informed basis to meet those expectations. At every board meeting, there should be an agenda item, stakeholder relationships. So the board is informed about what is happening between the company and the stakeholders, and can almost seamlessly then look at integrating these factors, because the functions in your company and the operations in your company are critically interdependent and interconnected with the resources you use and the relationships between the company and its stakeholders. The analysis that 80% of value was not an additive in a balance sheet led to a meeting of the United Nations. I chaired the United Nations Governance and Oversight Committee, with Kofi Annan was then the Secretary General. And the United Nations Environmental Programme Financial Initiative in 2009 asked me to come to United Nations in Geneva with the President and the Chief Executive of the International Federation of Accountants, which is the umbrella body for your society. And this was Chatham House rules. I had by that time issued a report in which I had recommended integrated thinking and issuing an integrated report. IFAC and UNEP was concerned about the fact that it was quite clear the way we were all reporting was no longer fit for purpose. We met, and the world leaders of corporate reporting were present at the United Nations in Geneva. And we agreed that the future actually laid in integrated thinking and the integrated report. What is integrated thinking? It is an understanding that the company uses these resources, has these relationships, but how the company makes its money, its business model, has an impact on society, the environment, and the economy. It operates in a triple context. Forget about the triple bottom line. We report in monetary terms. The company operates in that triple context. And that triple context, how you make your money, your activity, your operations, impacts either positively or negatively. You create value or you destroy value. Those positive impacts on integrated thinking, you identify them and you enhance those positive aspects. The negative impacts, you eradicate or ameliorate them. And you integrate this into your strategy, the whole long-term strategy of the company. Let's take, and you also look not only at that, but what is the impact of the product or the service you eventually produce? Let's take a concrete example, the Coca-Cola Company. Some years ago, about 8-9 years ago, the Coca-Cola Company realized that the most critical natural asset on planet Earth is water, which you will all appreciate here in India. And so they developed their long-term strategy, strategic plan, embedding that sustainability issue into that long-term thinking of reduce, reuse, replenish, and recycle water, so that by 2020 is their goal, they will not waste 1 liter of water, and they're going to get there. But on the 12th of May 2013, something quite extraordinary happened to a company that was some 120 years old. If I put a Coca-Cola bottle here on this lectern now, without any name on it, everybody in this room would know it's Coca-Cola. That's the brand, the value of the brand. That's what they have created, the most valuable brand in the world. But they focused on that for 120 years. But over the last 2 years, civil society in America has alleged, accused, not proven, that Coca-Cola is one of the reasons of obesity of children in America. So maybe some of you have noticed a change in the marketing strategy of the Coca-Cola company. In future, all our containers, be they cans or bottles, will have nutritional labeling on it. We will produce Coca-Cola with as low a calorie count as possible. Our advertising will not be directed to children under the age of 12. Wherever we operate and have bottling plants, we will support physical activity. Suddenly, after 120 years of carrying on business, realizing that the product itself has an impact on those three things: financial, environmental, and society, the human individual. So integrated thinking is looking at the impact of how the company operates, how it makes its money, its product itself, on these three aspects. And then we are in the information age. We take our annual financial statement according to international financial reporting standards, duly audited according to international auditing standards by Deloitte, and we put it online. We do a sustainability report according to G4, put it online. The company secretary, Institute of India, is present here in the audience, I know. I've chaired companies in America, Europe, and Southern Africa. I know. I sit in a board meeting, something happens, I will say to the director, what did we say about that again in the annual report? You get that glazed look in their eyes. They don't know. But ask the company secretary. He or she knows immediately. Why? Because they've put it together. They have got a report from the Human Resource Department, a report from the Chief Financial Officer, a report from the Sustainability Director, bolted the one onto the other, put a nice glossy cover on it, and the chairman's main job sometimes, I always thought, was to choose the picture on the glossy cover. And out would go 400 pages of different styles, different language, and reporting in an incomprehensible manner. But on integrated thinking and integrated reporting, there is a system. The board as a collective mind, because when a board makes a decision, it's one collective mind that thinks and makes that decision. When something goes wrong, you looked at individually. That collective mind looks at the financial report and the sustainability report, but more importantly, understands it. Having understood it, translates it in clear, concise, and understandable language in the integrated report, so that the user can make an informed assessment that the business of this company will sustain value creation short, medium, and long term. Think about the trustees of your pension fund. They owe you a duty of care to invest your money in the equity of companies that's going to sustain value creation longer term. They cannot tell that from the financial report. They cannot tell that if you ignored the financial report, assuming that you could not report on that, and just did a sustainability report. You need both. But you've got to apply your mind and extract that information, material information, and put it in clear, concise, and understandable language in the integrated report. Integrated thinking and the integrated report. Well, as chairman of the Global Reporting Initiative, I was telephoned by the chairman of Accounting for Sustainability in the United Kingdom, started by Prince Charles in 2004, when he said, "It concerns me that the royal household invests in companies, and yet when I read an annual report, I cannot see the impact of this company on the United Kingdom society and the environment." You've all seen pictures. He's an organic gardener. He thinks about these things. If you've ever read his book, Harmony, see how he thinks about these things. So he started this trust. And Sir Michael Peet of Peet Marwick fame was the chairman. And he called me, and I met with him in London for a cup of tea. Now, I've been in corporate world long enough. When someone of that stature asks me for a cup of tea, I know it's not to drink the tea. And the discussion was, he said, well, you know, sustainability reporting, GRI, and connected reporting, and now you've started integrated reporting. He said, connected reporting, integrated reporting, we must get together. We put them all together. I said, no, Sir Michael. Connected reporting, you've still got these silos. Integrated reporting, the board needs to sit and apply its mind and understand and integrate these things and show how they're interconnected and interdependent. And he said, well, let's get the world bodies around one table together. We'll use the convening powers of Prince Charles. Got Prince Charles within half an hour, Prince Charles agreed. Prince Charles sent out these gold embossed invitations, you know, with the 3 feathers on it, to the chairman of the International Accounting Standards Board, the chairman of the Global Reporting Initiative, that was me, chairman of Accounting for Sustainability, Sir Michael Peet, not important, president of the World Bank, president of the Institute of Internal Auditors, the president and chief executive of IFAC, the world chairman of the Big Four, world chairman of Deloitte, sent an invitation. WWF, you see disparate bodies, United Nations Environmental Programme. Nobody said no to the invitation. They all turned up at St. James's Palace, and I addressed the meeting. And at that meeting, which Prince Charles has described in a speech on the 4th of December 2013, a month ago in London, when we launched the version of how you do an integrated report. There are many historic events that have taken place at St. James's Palace, he said. But perhaps one of the most historic happened in 2010 at this meeting when the world standard setters and the world bodies on corporate reporting agreed the future lay in integrated thinking and the integrated report, which changed corporate reporting forever. There can be nothing more historic. I and the others present were privileged to witness corporate history. That is the future. So, I want to leave you this message. I have prepared a presentation, but I'll go through it very quickly. Yesterday's economic model, we carried on as if the world had limitless resources and an infinite capacity to absorb waste. False. We operated as if the company was in a vacuum. False. It operates in a triple context. We are in a changed world. There are great drivers for change, the technological revolution. We are in the era of digital manufacturing. The Economist only 3 months ago wrote that perhaps the manufacturing revolution in India and China might, in the next 10 years, revert to the west coast of America, to digital manufacturing. Apple has already started taking some of its component parts away from China and is being made in America more cheaply digitally. We don't know the outcome of that. The next generation, 25 years and younger, think differently their mindsets from yours and mine. We have to change our mindset to think holistically about how we make the money, how we impact on society and the environment. The social revolution, the Arab Spring, the Wall Street occupiers. Individual society have become activists. The economic revolution, nobody knows the outcome of the economic crisis in the world. That just shows you the S&P 500, how at least from 1995, 80% of value was not represented as by additives in a balance sheet. We are in the information age. You'll see Facebook and Twitter, how it's growing. That's an analysis by ICANN, one of the governance advisors to ICANN. You will see that every 60 seconds of every day, there are another 571 websites created. 204 million emails are sent around the world, and so on and so forth. Do you really believe that there's something confidential in your company? Think about it. That is why some stock exchanges have started a listing requirement that to be listed, you have to have social media management to react to something that happens on Twitter. The International Corporate Governance Network some years ago said we can no longer just rely on financial reporting. That's the development around the world, which I've told you about. Integrated thinking is exactly opposite to the silo approach on which we were all nurtured and taught. We need a mindset change at board level. We cannot, with the tools we've used and created these problems, try and solve the problems. We need that application of this collective mind, intellectual honesty in the best interests of the company, for the creation of total value. Notice I never said book value or economic value. Total value. Sustained value creation. There are two great challenges in the world today: financial stability and sustainability. Integrated thinking and the integrated report is a planetary bargain that can deal with both these issues. The Financial Stability Board today sits on my council and agrees that one of the causes of the global financial crisis was short-termism. One needs to think long-term about value creation. We were taught about value, and the accountants in the room particularly will know, but as business persons you will know, as the present value of expected future cash flows, anticipated future cash flows. Is that the only determinant? Think about it. Cannot be. So we need to identify the sustainability issues material to our business. This is a study done by the Global Compact, which just shows how companies are dealing with sustainability. Those are your resources companies use: financial, manufactured, human, intellectual, natural, social. Think back to the 18th century, 19th century, we started with natural assets. Human ingenuity, intellectual capital, used those natural assets, created financial and manufactured capital. And we just reported on financial and manufactured capital. We didn't bother to tell our users about how we were using other resources, and that just demonstrates it. That's the Coca-Cola change in its marketing. You all know what happened in Bangladesh, the collapse of that building. Activism that was taken in the Champs-Élysées in Paris. Within 14 days, they had created new standards of how they conduct their business in factories in Pakistan and Bangladesh. So we have inputs, we have business activities, we have outputs, the product, but there are always outcomes, impacts from how we carry on business and the product itself. Unilever is just another example. There are 103 iconic companies which are pilot programmers, 50 of the world's great asset owners, the Japanese pension fund, for example, Norwegian pension fund, asset managers, Prudential, Hermes, have joined our asset network, all signed memorandum of understanding with the IIRC, agreeing the way forward is integrated thinking and the integrated report. Unilever 4 years ago changed its long-term thinking completely. So the question is, if I became a non-executive director of your company, my first meeting, I would ask, Mr. Chairman, if I may, through you, ask the chief executive to tell me, I've seen what the bottom line is, but I'd like to know, how does the company make its money? And I'd like to know, how's the company going to continue to make its money in the future? So that's the business model. How does the company make its money? That wonderful, I know the Japanese Consul General is here, that wonderful, wise statement, Japanese statement. If you open your kimono, make sure you've had a good bath. And that is true about corporate reporting, the wisdom of that statement. Your report influences behavior. Because if you're going to report you're carrying on business which is destructive of natural assets in India, do you think your company is going to survive? The answer is clearly in the negative. System of reporting, we haven't had one. We've had the company secretary bolting several reports, one onto the other. That's my cartoon, which Mahendra has plagiarized. There you will see what I call my tarantula. You will see, where's that pointer? It's not pointing. Is it on? No, it's not pointing. Yeah, it is. Okay, it's pointing, yeah. Okay, I've got it. Sorry. But you will see from there, you will see from that, you've got your 6 resources, you've got at your bottom, your social capital, your relationship with your stakeholders, those are your inputs. Then your business model, your governance, how you govern, you structure your company, your risks, your opportunities, how you count your management accounts, how you deal with your stakeholders, your ongoing strategic communication with your stakeholders, being aware of them, informing management. And then you have your product, your output. But then you have your outcomes. You have those, the way you carry on business and your product itself impacts on those assets, or those, and eventually it comes back again to the start. So the drivers for change, the state of the planet, and of course there is now responsible investment. Trillions of dollars have signed up to the United Nations Principles of Responsible Investment. Unless you are taking into account in your investment analysis the environmental, social, and governance factors, the asset manager should not invest in a company. So you need responsibility, accountability, fairness, transparency. By transparency, I don't mean nakedness. I mean balanced reporting, the positives with the negatives. You know, we have a natural human inclination to highlight the positives and downplay the negatives. It needs to be balanced. And my 5 C's: conscience, intellectual honesty and independence of mind, communication with stakeholders, competence, ability, the necessary skills, commitment, capacity. Do I have the capacity to take on this directorship, or am I too busy? Courage. When you take an appointment as a director, your personal estate and your personal reputation is on line. It takes courage to take risk for reward. So, evolution and revolution of corporate reporting, that's my famous octopus, which you may use, Mahendra. In the arms of an octopus, you have your financial report, carbon emissions, whatever the law requires in India. Sustainability report, online, but the board applies its mind, and in those guidelines in the framework of the IIRC.org, you will do your integrated report, which is completely comprehensible. I just gave you an example here of a company doing an integrated report. Look how simple, but look how informative. The great stuff we did this year. The stuff we didn't do so well this year. Understandable? And look at the next page. What matters to our stakeholders and the way we engaged with our stakeholders. Look how informed you are already about that company. Some companies using symbols. So you can do those case studies of integrated thinking, integrated reporting of those great companies. That's some of the companies that are now adopting integrated thinking and doing integrated reports. The duty of care, well, I think you should ask yourself in regard to your company, what do you know or ought you to know about what is happening on planet Earth? This physically round planet, but actually we operate in a flat, borderless electronic world. And what are you aware of in regard to natural assets and the impact on society? And who is society? Your customer, your lender, because when your bank lends you money, where does the bank get the money from? From individual deposits. When you raise capital, pension funds, superannuation funds, who provides that money? Individuals. Who provides labor? Individuals. Society is the licensor of your business. So some conclusions. Tell your stakeholders what you do what you tell them, and write it down in your integrated report in clear, concise, and understandable language. Reporting influences decision-making. It's a concept whose time has come. And you can stop armies, but not a concept whose time has come, as limited liability was in the 19th century, became a driver of the Industrial Revolution. So let me conclude with this. Man and nations depend on ideas. Helen Keller, that famous blind woman, said the only thing worse than being blind is having sight and no vision. I ask you, all of you, what do you see? What do you see in regard to your company? What do you see that the impact of how you carry on business is on Indian society and the environment of this great country? And do you think that the way you're carrying on business, your business model, will sustain value creation long term? Do you think that it will be positive for your children and your children's children into the 22nd century? And are you just going to carry on as usual? Well, do you have to grope in the dark? No. You have the light before you now with integrated thinking and the integrated report. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, sir, for that extremely knowledgeable address. And I'm definite that your talk and presentation has added immense value to this platform. And continuing with the knowledge creation and learning, it's time for me to request our chief guest for the inaugural session, Shri Prashant Saran, whole-time member, SEBI, to please come up to the podium and enlighten us with the uptake of the business responsive reporting in India. Over to Mr. Saran. Sir.
Judge Mervyn King, Mr. Ashish Chauhan, Mr. Vaidya, Mr. Chauhan again, and Mr. Yogi Sriram, and all my friends here. It's a pleasure and privilege to be here this morning. And I really don't think that you are in a mood to listen much after listening to the scintillating speech by Judge Mervyn King, and which is very, very important for us. But however, I have to do my duty, so my 15 minutes, so you will have to bear with me. I'll divide my presentation into two parts. The first part is some kind of a report card on SEBI's initiative on business responsibility reporting. And the second part I will devote to some personal thoughts of mine. So I'll begin with the National Voluntary Guidelines, or even before that, in 2006 perhaps, Reserve Bank of India came out with the first report of first circular about the triple bottom line reporting. It was not mandatory, and it was just a kind of a sensitization. Then in 2009 came the National Voluntary Guidelines issued by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. This was about the social, environmental, and economic responsibility. The National Voluntary Guidelines laid down 9 principles, which I will quickly recapitulate to make your memory fresh. It is about, first, the conduct business with ethics, transparency, and accountability. 2, provide safe and sustainable goods and services. 3, promote well-being of all employees. 4, respect interests of all stakeholders, especially vulnerable sections. 5th, respect and promote human rights. 6th, respect, promote, and restore environment. 7, responsible policy advocacy. 8, support inclusive growth and equitable development. 9, provide value to customers in a responsible manner. These 9 principles were to be reported by each company on a voluntary basis. The advantage for each of these principles, if they are followed, was laid down in the guidelines, and the guidelines said that if you follow these principles, what you will have is a growth in revenues and market shares. You will have better productivity. You will continue to have license to operate from the society. You will enhance your human capital, and you will enhance your brand value. This is what the guidelines said. And they set down the reporting standards, and what they said that divide your report into 3 parts. First, A, general details. B, you report principle-wise. What do you report principle-wise is that do you have a policy? Are you aware of this thing? Is your MD directly responsible for it? And so on and so forth. So this was NVG in 2009. SEBI came in 2012, September. And what SEBI said, that we are making reporting under National Voluntary Guidelines mandatory for top 100 companies. And there were some flourishes added by SEBI in that. What the flourishes were? The first was that we mandated it, but what we said, it is mandated, but it is on comply or explain basis. So it is not that you have to definitely comply. If you can't comply, please explain that why couldn't you comply. We also even laid down this thing that to get us the 3 products where design has incorporated the ESG concerns. And then what SEBI did was to put out FAQs on its website. And in our FAQs, we made it a little more quantitative. We made the reporting, we wanted to make the reporting a little less woolly. Now, it is more than 1 year is there. 1 year has been completed. So it's time to have a look at what has happened, how we have fared. So recently I took a review. What I found that 88 companies out of 100 have reported. That's very gratifying. Then I went through the reports, and I found that the reports ranged from excellent to absolutely indifferent. So some of the excellent, they went principle by principle. They followed everything to the T. And I'm impressed, plainly impressed. And there were many companies, what they did was to tear out some 4 pages from the annual report and put it into this. We need to look at that. Third point, that whether I am personally satisfied with what has been done. On the issue that so many companies have reported, many of them are very good, I should have been very, very satisfied person. I'm in first year of reporting. Normally, it is 3 years before the systems stabilize. But personally, I'm not very happy. I mean, report-wise, it is okay. Why I'm not personally happy? Because less than 2 months back, I was addressing a group of senior executives. And there, among many things, then I talked about the SEBI's initiative on the business responsibility reporting. I was surprised to note that absolutely none of them was aware that SEBI has put up a circular like this and reporting has to be made like that. And then they said, how it's possible, if you have mandated, then how it's possible that my company is not reporting? I said that it is very well possible that your compliance officer is reporting, and that is why you have not come to know about it, that there is something known as the corporate business responsibility reporting. And when I came back and when I did my survey, what I found that one of the companies who had submitted an excellent report, its senior executive was present and saying this thing that he didn't have a clue that there was something like this. So what is the message from my side? And what is the lesson for me? The lesson for me is this, that we have to make the awareness about the business responsibility reporting much more there. We have to be very, very proactive, and we will be seeking help of all of you in spreading this message. And this is my first part of the address. I still think I have got 5 minutes. One of the reasons I personally feel, I mean, I'm no historian, and I am very sure that some of the facts which I'll be telling might be wrong, but I am very sure again that directionally I'm not incorrect. One of the reasons perhaps why Western countries overtook India and China over the last 400 years. India and China had a GDP more than 50% of the world. And they came to less than 2% or 3% over a period of 400 years. Why did it happen? Many things can be said, that there was the effect of Renaissance, there was the effect of Industrial Revolution, Scientific Revolution, printing press, so on and so forth. And there can be counter-arguments for that, but my own personal take is this, that the birth of corporation was a very, very, very huge deciding factor, because it freed the capital from the fear of being sent into a jail if you failed in your business enterprise, and there were debtor prisons which were hellholes in 17th and 18th century. So the issue was that this corporation has done very, very well. And this corporation kept on doing better and better, better and better. It became more powerful, even more powerful. By the time it was 1980s, corporations were bigger and more powerful than many, many nations in the world. And not only they were powerful, they were very respected. The corporate leaders were seen as the leaders of society. They were seen as leaders of the humanity. The political leaders were not seen as. Political leaders has messed up through World War I, World War II, and so many other wars after that. Political leaders were not respected. Business leaders were respected. But the things started changing. After the apogee of 1980, the things started changing. Over a period of next 25, 30 years, corporations kept on losing their respect in the society. it was in the early 2000s that there was a spate of corporate failures where the very greed and I mean, whatever bad words you can use about it that came to the fore. There was Enron, there was WorldCom, and there was a series of failures. And then as icing on the cake, or I mean, the reverse of it, came the global financial crisis, that whatever respect was left for the business leaders was wiped away in the global financial crisis. Now, the point is this, that the society is in no mood to grant further operating license. Not only that there is a threat from the society withdrawing your operating license, the corporation itself is under threat. There is a counter threat from the technology, that with the net coming into being, and with the 3D printing, manufacturing technologies, and so on and so forth, the need of the present style of doing business might not be there. It might be a huge, loosely confederated individual people who coordinate themselves on the net in some new formations. So for the corporation, there is a struggle. The corporations have to wake up and realize that we have to pull up our socks. How do they pull up those socks? How do they win back the consent of the society to operate? My own take is this, that the corporate governance is one way of re-establishing yourself. Now, if you look at the corporate governance part, what I find that most of the corporate governance tenets are in respect of protecting the minority shareholders from the onslaught of the majority shareholders on one hand, or in those places where there is a diversified ownership, in those cases it is against the tyranny of the managers. So this is how the structures, the board structures, the voting structures, the e-voting, this and that, related party transactions, name anything. You look at whatever the corporate governance guidelines are there, clause 49 or whatever it is, you'll find most of it is for protecting the minority shareholders against the onslaught of majority shareholders or of the tyranny of the managers. But as Professor King just said very, very correctly, that financial capital is not the only capital. To be exact, there was a time in the 19th century that the financial capital was the main thing, rest everything was commodity. You could employ people as a commodity, there was a lot of unemployment, you didn't need skills, the land was available if you had money, there was no environmental concerns, so on and so forth. The financial capital was the king. But over a period of last 200 years, what has happened, that it is the financial capital, it's the finance which is a commodity. Rest everything is very, very rare. You don't find employees easily, you don't find the land easily, environmental concerns are very, very important. So as a matter of this, that the other stakeholders, the other five capitals, what Professor King mentioned, they are as bigger, perhaps bigger stakeholders than the provider of financial capital. Who are the persons to take care of this thing? The only thing which comes to my mind is the institution of independent director, and with this I'll close my address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for so generously sharing your thoughts about the business responsive reporting in India. And now, if I may please request Mr. M.K. Chauhan to kindly present a book authored by Mr. Sandeep Parekh as a token of our appreciation and gratitude to our eminent personalities on the dais. So if I may please request Mr. M.K. Chauhan to present our token of appreciation to our chief guest for the inaugural session, Mr. Prashant Saran. Thank you very, very much, sir, for being a part of our inaugural session. Requesting Mr. M.K. Chauhan to present a token of appreciation to our keynote speaker, Judge Mervyn King. Mr. Shailesh Vaidya. Mr. Ashish Chauhan. And ladies and gentlemen, that would have to be the loudest round of applause I've ever heard. And Mr. Yogi Sriram. And of course, as we do come to the end of the inaugural session, I'd like to request Mr. Yogi Sriram, who is the President, Bombay Management Association, and also Senior Vice President, Corporate Human Resources, Larsen & Toubro, to kindly propose the vote of thanks for the inaugural. Sir.
Thank you. And I think as a part of sustainability, saving time is very important. So therefore, I'll try to be succinct and brief as possible. First of all, my compliments to Asian Center for Corporate Governance and Sustainability and Mahindra Chauhan and Mahindra Young Knowledge Foundation for putting this extremely interesting program together. I must thank the audience, first of all, before I come to the distinguished members on the dais for being so patient and listening in to very interesting conversations. Judge Mervyn King, Prashant Saran ji, Ashish Kumar Chauhan ji, Shailesh Vaidya ji, and M.K. Chauhan ji all brought in some very, very interesting perspectives. For me, there are few which will stick. Firstly, I think sustainability, Judge Mervyn, if I may use an expression, is a tryst with one's own conscience. It's a tryst with one's own conscience because one has to be aware of what one is doing for the future. And I liked your metaphor about trustees of a pension fund. You know, think about how we as responsible citizens should be like trustees of a pension fund. I think there were various aspects brought, and another point that was very important is, in a country like ours, where we have the demographic dividend, who can really help us in this awakening, if I may call it, and that's the Gen Y. They're the ones who can look you in the eye and say that what you're doing, is it really worth all the EVAs, etc., that you keep talking about? Is it really total sustainability development, or is it just very myopic and short-sighted? So thank you very much, distinguished speakers, for making this morning very thought-provoking and triggering some great conversations for the full day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, please join me in extending a big, big thank you to all our dignitaries on the dais. Thank you very, very much, sirs, for your time. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to have a very quick 15-minute break for tea and coffee. And just a sincere request, please do help us stick to our schedules as much as we can. So I'm going to request you all to please join us back in the next 15 minutes sharp. And of course, here's inviting all our VIP dignitaries to the Norton Hall, which is right behind the stage, because tea and coffee is served at the Norton Hall for all our VIP dignitaries. And for the rest of us, I'm going to request all of you to please join us back in the next 15 minutes. Thank you.